Major support for these broadcasts is provided by New York Community Bank, Chase Commercial Term Lending, Chelsea Lighting, Capital One Bank, Perfect Building Maintenance, Genova Burns, Giantomasi and Webster, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, the Wyckoff Group, Greenberg Traurig, LLP, M&T Bank. Additional support is provided by Ackman Ziff Real Estate Group, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, Briarwood Organization, Bruce Mosler, C.B. Richard Ellis, Colliers International New York, LLC, Cushman and Wakefield, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Douglaston Development, Levine Builders, DDG Partners, Friedman LLP, Accountants and Advisors, Flushing Bank, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Center at Syracuse University, James Orphanides, Centurion Holdings, John Katsimatidis, Red Apple Group, Madison Realty Capital, Margolin Weiner and Evans, LLP, Certified Public Accountants and Business Advisors, Massey Knackle Realty Services, New Banks, Meridian Capital Group, Newmark Knight Frank, Sterling and Sterling, SJP Properties, Stonehenge Partners, and these friends.
I can't believe it's 2012, but to me, the condo market is like 2007. The rental market is like 2007. What has happened over 5 years that the market has improved? So to tell me and my viewers what's happening, I've assembled 4 individuals to give their viewpoints and to provide insight on the market. My guests, they include Joe McMillan, who is the CEO of DDG Partners, Joel Bergstein, who's the president of Lincoln Equities, Ken Horn, who's the president of Alchemy Properties, and last but not least, a frequent guest over here normally, Jeff Levine, who is the chairman, CEO of Douglaston Development. So, Mr. Levine, I still remember when you were coming out of the ground in Williamsburg in a time that Lehman had failed, and it was a difficult time. You know, people tell me it takes a little more than a cycle. How come this cycle changed so fast? How come the world improved so great?
Well, it wasn't so fast.
Oh!
The reality is, Lehman filed, I think it was in 08, okay?
Yes, it was September 08.
Right.
Bear Stearns in March.
Now we're fully, 4 years later, and the world has come back, but not the world. New York City has come back. New York City, including Brooklyn, has come back. The balance of the metro area, you go out to Long Island, you go up to Westchester, you go to the burbs in Jersey, and the market has not come back the way the Manhattan market and the Brooklyn market have come back.
And what about the Jersey City market that our friend Mr. Bergstein?
Jersey City is an evolving market at a lower price point, but is an alternative, just the way people used to look at Brooklyn as an alternative to Manhattan.
Now let's talk about neighborhoods and changes. We were talking prior to the show that about 25 years ago, you built a building on 14th Street off 9th Avenue, and Joe is doing a conversion of a building and building a condo on right across the street. And at that time, what was the neighborhood like? Or should I preface, when Taconic bought 111 8th Avenue, what was the neighborhood like and what would people buy over there? And then Joe will talk a little bit of what's happening today in the meatpacking.
When you talk about Taconic, that's much more recent in terms of the overall
Let's talk about 25 years ago, when you were 12.
25 years ago, the meatpacking district was really a meatpacking district. During the day, the trucks taking the beef to the market from 5 in the morning until early in the afternoon were prevalent. The streets were crowded, congested.
And how was it after 5?
After the evening came, the rats as big as cats came onto the street. There was a very famous steak restaurant. I think it was
Still
called...
there, Old Homestead.
No, not the old Homestead. I think it was Frank's. That was literally on 14th Street on the north side between Hudson and 9th and 10th. That was there for over 100 years. The sawdust was on the floor, was over 100 years old. So it was not the meatpacking district that we know today.
So let's talk about your development. Now, you weren't even around at that time, though. But let's talk about what's happening.
DDG wasn't around at that time,
Yes.
but the neighborhood has changed tremendously in the last 25 years, even in the last 5 years, phenomenally so. It's a 24-hour destination, and it's not just a New York City destination; it's a global destination. You have retailers, you have Apple Store right there. You have Hugo Boss. You have Levi. You have the Whitney Museum, who's coming in 2015. You have the High Line, and you have nightlife, you have restaurants,
So
you
who's
have
buying?
hotels.
I mean, you have a beautiful condo over there. Who are the buyers? Are they New Yorkers or are they out-of-towners? And then I'm going to talk about your buildings and the other condos and developments.
I think it's a mix. If you look at our building, the location is hard to replicate. Very unique. It's the only residential building in the meatpacking district, given the way the zoning is in the area. I think our buyers will be a combination of young professionals, young couples, and out-of-town pied-à-terres. I think the finishes are going to appeal to a luxury buyer. Pricing is going to reflect same, and I think that it'll be fantastic.
Ken, let's talk about the projects that you have right now in close to development. Then we'll talk about Woolworth and some other things. So you have in Brooklyn today one, and then you have one in 15th Street, and then you still have a couple of units left on the other talk.
Well, the interesting thing for us is the project we're doing in Brooklyn, which is at 291 Union Street. It was a failed site, which went under really in 2008. Really sat as a hole in the ground until we purchased it in 2000, or late 2010, early 2011. But the building is up, and we started to market about 3 weeks ago.
How tall is the building?
It's 7 stories, 32 condominiums, 11 townhouses, and just by word of mouth, we've sold 60% of the project in, 5-6 weeks, probably right around there. Full asking prices, buyers paying transfer taxes, buyers paying mansion tax. But what's fascinating is
no more incentives to
no
the
more
buyers?
incentives.
Joe, no, the same throw?
We expect to start marketing in the next couple of weeks at 345 Meatpacking with pricing north of $2,000 a foot, buyers paying transfer taxes, no incentives.
That's a nice change in the market. We could all say that from the way things were probably 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago.
I remember when you opened up on 2nd Avenue, and then when you opened up the west side, that wasn't the, then you had to
That
give
wasn't
away.
the norm. I mean, frankly, what we ended up doing, we opened up each of those projects in late 2009, early 2010, which was not the greatest time, as we all know. And the buyers who came in, the first question they would ask is, how many units have you sold? And the answer was none. And then the question would be, when you hit 15%, let us know and we'll come back. So there was this whole concept of safety in numbers. So as a developer, your incentive was to get to that 15%, to get your plan declared effective. So those first intrepid people were the ones who got the best deal. And that's not the case anymore. So in terms of the twist, the change, I think Jeff is right. It didn't happen overnight. But what did happen is that the inventory that was available in 2008, 2009, 2010 slowly but surely got eaten away.
Well, let's talk about what really happened, though. After the filing of Lehman, the complete absence of financing for development led to a lack of supply, which is really what's impacting the market today. Now, in 2012, is the first time you're really seeing competent developers securing development loans. If you went back to 8, 9, 10, and 11, there was very little money for development, and the nature of structured financing completely changed. Whereas in the past, you could do 75% senior debt, a 15% mezz at high interest rate but no participation, and do a significant project with a 10% equity requirement. Today, you're talking about 35% equity at a minimum, 65% senior debt at a maximum, and it's a big ticket to write for a large project.
But you bring up an interesting subject. the word competent. And I still remember, let's say 2005, 6, somebody would say, I'm a developer, and they would become a developer. And I remember one guy, and I had him on a show, and he bought a site or a couple of sites, and I said, what's your background? He said, oh, you know, I'm a developer. I said, what's your background? He said, no, I was in the investment banking. He wasn't a developer, but everyone thought they were a developer. The question of competency wasn't there. It was, if I can buy a site, if I can buy this former garage or something like that, I could build on it.
Well, you know, I trace it back to April '05, because we were doing a project at 121 West 19th Street, and we opened up for sales. We had 67 units. We had raised prices the day before we opened. We'd sold 67 units in 2 days. And I remember the people in my office saying, this is great. Look how easy the real estate industry is. And I remember saying, this is terrible. It's great that we sold them, but the bad news is that everyone thought they could be a real estate developer. How hard would it be to be?
I have to remind myself that Ken was on a show, and we once spoke about this, because we were always talking about you put in, you know, the Viking oven and the Genair and all of the rest. And Ken said that he sold this unit, and then about 2 years later he went there and he opened up the oven, and the oven was being used for storage for the guys' shirts.
That's correct.
Okay, that was a storage.
Never turn the oven on.
Okay, you know.
Gonna build more closets.
It's Manhattan.
It was Manhattan. So Joel,
Good use.
you know, you know, you've been in a very successful person in New Jersey, in New York, and other areas. You've really spent most of the last couple of years in the commercial, and now your venture to Astoria. Now, did you have to get your passport from Greece to come to Astoria? And you're over there, you know, and it's only taken you 4 years. So let's talk about Hallett's, and then we're going to talk about Jeff's new development in Williamsburg.
So first of all, I grew up in Queens. So
You're allowed. That's
I
right.
was allowed.
Permit-
So I was a permanent resident there. We looked at markets, and I think, you know, there was a lot of groundbreaking in Williamsburg and in Greenpoint, and we were looking for a market on the waterfront that had been overlooked. Long Island City was developing. Hunters Point South had a city mandate, and we found a peninsula which is opposite Carl Schurz Park. There's a big Allied building supply sign on the site, and with great visibility right at Hell's Gate, which is a famous water area where the Long Island Sound and the East River merge, and the currents are very strong. And we assembled 3 parcels, and we've been through a process now, which will, by the time we're through, will have taken 4 years for a large-scale rezoning. We expect to be certified in December. And approved.
How many units? 2,300?
A total of 2,300 units with a 20% affordable component. What's interesting about it is we are adjacent to a New York City Housing Authority campus. And we found ourselves in a situation where we actually incorporated the campus into the concept. And some of the affordable units will be built on the campus. And actually we're buying those pads from New York City Housing Authority, and that money is going back into the Housing Authority Development Fund right there in order to renovate the units there. So we've garnered a lot of community support because we've worked from the ground up rather from the top down.
Now, the question, which is a little different than Jeff, I mean, Jeff started a couple years in the worst time, the Edge, a fantastic condominium in Williamsburg, and now he's building on the adjacent property, a rental over there, but he's not far from the L train. You're 3/4 of a mile to the subway. So how are people going to commute over there?
The difference, the fundamental difference, having grown up in Queens with 3 guys that grew up in Brooklyn, is transportation in Queens. Historically, there are really only 3 subway lines. And Queens was always referred to as a 2-fare zone, even though you can swipe your Metro card. And so really many residents in Astoria today are not any further away than our site is from the subway line. But there are currently 4 bus lines which terminate on the peninsula. So they will be able to get residents there. We also, our study indicates that probably 40% of residents there will be heading east and not necessarily going into Manhattan. And a lot of the potential tenants.
Now, you're planning a water taxi?
We are. Part of our approval does not include a water taxi. The city has an initiative. They've looked at the site. There is a
Which is interesting. Now, you have a water taxi, right?
We have the most active water taxi stop in New York City.
More active than IKEA?
More active than IKEA, yes, in Red Hook.
So talk to me about the Edge and talk to me about, is the next building called Edge 2?
Absolutely not. The
Edgy?
As you know, the first phase of the Edge was approximately 1,000 units, which I'm happy to say we have 3 units left for sale.
Boy, that's great. It was advertorial when we used to sell it. Okay, now.
We have another portion of the Edge, the 1-acre site, which currently houses a great attraction for residents of Brooklyn and Manhattan, the Williamsburg Fleet and Smorgasburg on Saturdays and Sundays during the spring and summer months, where literally there are 15,000 visitors to that site every Saturday and Sunday by bicycle, by train, by bus, by water taxi.
Let's get back to the real estate.
We bought the adjacent piece to the south of us, which had approved zoning for over 500 units in a 40-story building. We've already broke ground on that, and we expect to deliver it in somewhat less than 2 years from now.
And that's going to be a rental.
That is 100% rental. We also own the site, which is known to be phase 2 of the Edge. That phase 2, as I said, is the current flea market and such. We are currently planning a new development upon that site, which will follow.
Now, will that be a rental or a condominium? Because right now, I have a condo developer and I have a condo developer here. I have a rental over here, but you're...
In the immortal words of William Shakespeare, that is the question. The issue is the condo market in Williamsburg is hot. We're selling at an average north of $1,000 a foot today. The downside, as my friend Mr. Horn, who does quite a bit of condominium work, knows, is it takes a big pair of Batesum to do a 400-unit condo because the economic cycles come so fast today. You have a limited opportunity to market
wait
in
a
this
second.
market.
Is there anything wrong, you're talking about, and I understand, the nerve to build a 400. Take the related property that they were building called the Mima on 42nd Street, and let's take the Walentis property called the Mercedes. You have these over there. What if you make a mixed use? You do residential rental and you do condominium, the higher units over there in the condo.
A hybrid is conceivable, but frankly, a hybrid in a very vertical building eats a lot of core for your vertical transportation, and theoretically...
So forget the elevator, we'll make people walk up the stairs.
But I think one of the other elements is Jeff
you need to have...
reference financing becomes a little bit more challenging because the lenders...
And you also need a redundancy of entrance, lobbies, elevator cores, because you're not going to maximize your condominium price sharing a core with a residential rental. It's a different type of occupant.
In most locations, it's not efficient. Unless you have a very large floor plate, your loss factor becomes so high.
You would have a
that
multiple
it
core anyway.
Now,
There's also the snobbery aspect.
Like I would love to have the Imperial House. That would work.
There's also the snobbery aspect in the sense that if someone's buying a condominium,
They want to be in a condo building.
They want to be in a condo.
Yep.
They don't necessarily want to share services. They want to know that everyone's an owner, no one's a renter. And then you have the transient nature of renters. People who are buying don't necessarily want that.
You bring up an interesting item. Your buildings are small. Many of your buildings over the year have been small.
And if you go back to the Mima, if I recall correctly, they ended up doing
as rental.
Complete rental.
They did.
Right. My question is, what type of services are you, okay, and we have a couple. We have the meatpacking district. We have, as we would call before, the Tootsie Roll, which was really the cellar cherry building, but people know it over there. You have some buildings. What kind of amenities do you give these people?
We tend to highly amenitize our buildings. 24-hour doorman, 24-hour concierge, 345 meatpacking will have a storage room, it will have a fitness center, it'll have bicycle room, it'll have common roof deck available for all the residents. And many green aspects to the building, planted terraces. Given the nature of the market we target, we think that that's appropriate. If you were going for a different segment of the market, you may not do that, but we do that in all of our projects.
Now you bought a landmark building, you bought the upper portion of this building over there.
It's a new
called
building.
The Woolworth
It was built about
building?
100 years ago. It's a newcomer to New York.
You realize, in my research, I found out that they still have Woolworth stores in Australia. That is one of the few places that Woolworth stores are still there. So people know, from Australia, oh, the Woolworth building. People have no idea that what Five and Dime were, except for Joel and I, who are older over here. But
Thank you for leaving me out of that.
yeah, no. When
Although
when you hit 60, I will tell.
Although if you do walk into the lobby, there's actually a gargoyle of Frank Woolworth with nickels and dimes coming out of his pockets.
Talk to me about the Woolworth building and what you're going to do over there and the amenities and that type of thing.
Well, it's an interesting purchase, obviously. We bought floors 29 through 58. They're all vacant. They have been vacant for about 10 years. They've been demoed. There's actually an elevator shaft that's been cut already. Landmarks has approved a separate entrance on Park Place, so obviously you won't be entering from Broadway.
Right, they don't have to have the NYU School of
Right, you couldn't have
Education.
And we plan to do condominiums. Obviously the views are remarkable.
How many condominiums in total?
Well,
do you
it's interesting because we're kind of looking at the building in almost like a two-tiered building. Everything from 29 up to around 51 or 52 will be
one story.
No, just one kind of concept. And then the interesting concept is going to be the upper 6 floors, which is where the cupola is, which is remarkable. I mean, I really cannot think of another penthouse in New York that will be like that. Our imaginations are going a bit wild in terms of how it's going to be, although our nature is somewhat conservative. But we are engaging a very high-end designer to come up with something that's unique relative to the iconic
You bring up
value
a
of the
very
building.
interesting point. You've been building, I don't want to say this, but over the years you've built affordable condominiums. Joe has built luxury condominiums. I mean, the quality, higher price, more higher edge. Jeff's have been quality, affordable, $1,000 a foot. The zinc may have been higher, $2,000. This is a totally different world.
That's absolutely correct. And that was something we discussed internally. Michael, you're not the first one to have brought that up. This is an iconic building. There's nothing like it. No one has done a building like this. No one. I can't think of anyone who's taken a building that's 100 years old, where your first residential floor is 400 feet up. No. Right? No one. We don't know anyone in New York who's done it. So the answer is we are developers. We're good developers. We're careful
Wait a
developers.
second. I'm not questioning. But I'm just saying it's different.
It's an entirely different market, and we know that. And that's why we are treating this building with a little bit different craft than we would necessarily if we're selling at $1,500 a foot.
I think the benefit that you have is you've seen the success of the Gary building, Forest City Ratner's building, and what people are willing to pay for rents at the top.
But he's selling.
But
it translates.
But it translates because when you take a look at the demographic there, a lot of families. And so
the other thing which I find, every time I go down there and you hop on the subway, the amount of people, tourists, that are standing outside that building, taking photographs of that building.
Yeah, but part of I agree with you 100%, the tourists over there, but you have a lot of tourist attractions specifically. You have the Trade Center a block away. You have Century 21 where every tourist runs into.
Michael, remember what's happening with that neighborhood. I can't think of any neighborhood in Manhattan that's changing more than that portion. Remember that on our corner, there's going to be a Four Seasons hotel, and there's going to be a hotel, obviously, with residences on top. Condé Nast just took 1 million feet down there. And so in terms of the gentrification of that part of Manhattan, it's going to be an entirely different world in the next 2 to 3 years.
No, I agree. And I also, you have the Warren Street, which is not far away, right?
Correct.
But what are you doing over there?
We're doing luxury condos, and this is a block and a half from Woolworth. I agree with what Ken said about the neighborhood. The neighborhood has transitioned tremendously. There's been a lot of development down around World Trade, not just tourists, but families. You look at the population density has increased significantly, and we think we'll benefit from that, as will Ken at Woolworth.
I can't tell you the amount of phone calls that we've received from very well-known people who called and said, "Ken, this is so-and-so," and I would say, "Oh yeah, right." And they would say, "We read in the paper that you guys just bought the Woolworth building. When you're ready to go, please let us know. We'd love to be in an iconic building below 14th Street with the views like this. Give us a call."
Jersey City. What are you doing in Jersey City? These guys, they have to take the path.
Well, it's the 6th borough. Jersey City really is not viewed as part of New Jersey as far as the residential and even the office market. So we again looked at a pioneering area, which was primarily an industrial area, and if you look back 25 years, Sam Lefrak looked at the yards and
Newport
and built Newport. And we closed on a site which has a light rail stop yet to be built on it. And it literally is the other side of the track of Hoboken. So we really view ourselves as an extension of Hoboken and Jersey City. And it's one light rail stop to the PATH station, and the PATH station takes you right into Manhattan. So from a price point of view, it's less expensive than Williamsburg on a rental basis. Rents in Jersey City are in the 40s. And so it's an alternative. It's New Jersey, not the boroughs, and a different, actually a very different demographic.
I have 3 developers over here. Have any of you ever thought of developing in Jersey City or Hoboken?
Yeah, we actually, years ago, there was an arts district in Jersey City,
Yep.
and we had met with various artists to try to buy a building with them to convert to condominium. And the concept, I think at that particular point, the legislature was just trying to come up with the definition of an artist as to whether it's someone who actually performs or actually someone who creates. And so that was a big to-do, but we worked about 1.5 years on trying to come up with artist housing in Jersey City, and I thought it was great.
Joe?
Well,
We-
go ahead.
We have looked at both Jersey City and Hoboken. We have not made any
There's
acquisitions
not
out
much.
there.
Well, actually,
available.
I've owned property in Hoboken through the years. I'm looking at something at Journal Square in Jersey City as we speak, and I've done tract housing in the suburbs of Jersey for many years.
So you're positive about New Jersey?
I think it's just a different price structure, and if you can make it work within that price structure, it's fine.
You know, there was something that I asked prior to the show with regard to tax abatements, and, you know, because the taxes are so high in New York City, what effect is that having on the sales of condominiums?
I think it depends on the project and the product. I think for luxury condos, high-end, high-quality finish, minimal, if any, impact. Our projects some have had 421A going forward, some will not. It's not impacting our pricing whatsoever.
Kenny?
I would agree. I think that there is some expectation in some of probably the lower-end product, lower-end meaning below, say, $1,200 a foot, that they are in effect. But remember that the new enactment of the law caps the benefit. So even with the benefit, it's not as if you're only paying $150 a month in taxes. You're still paying taxes with
I
not
still remember
not fully
when
assessed.
He took his building on 23rd Street and changed it from a rental to a condo.
Yes.
Right.
I will tell you this, I think the taxes in New York City are the beauty that's going to kill the beast, because I think we are renting for high prices, we are paying high taxes. It makes these deals very difficult to pencil.
I would like to thank the 4 of you, Joe McMillan, Joe Bergstein, Ken Horn, and Jeff Levine. And in a couple of months, I'll invite you all back, and we'll see what's happening. See you next week.